evening and shalom and blessings to you all in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Welcome to Un-Apologetics, where we are unapologetic about apologetics, and I am your host, C.J. Cox. Before we get started here, just want to go ahead and say a brief prayer. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for everything that you've given us here. I want to thank you for the ability to make these videos, Lord. I pray that you use these videos for nothing more than glorification of you and your word and your kingdom, Lord. That you help me step aside so that you may be glorified, Lord. And I ask these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Alright, so here we are today on, well, doesn't really matter what the recording day of this is, I guess. Going to be posted here on Friday, I believe the 4th, if I'm not mistaken. We recorded on a Monday, April 29th, though. Long time since we've actually had an episode here of Un-Apologetics, so my apologies on that. The reason for that is because I'm not very good at doing shows consistently is 100% honestly why that is. We've been getting the Watchdogs on a lot more, and so now we also have been getting these other ones on a lot more as well. And I think that's going to help a lot now that we've got some consistency. We've got good equipment, obviously, as you know, we've gotten that like 2 months ago, and then we've also now got a consistent source of internet, which is also really cool. So we also want to briefly mention that we have now started putting the Watchdog on YouTube, so if you're interested in our political content and news content, we have the Watchdog. It is a news content, our news show, rather, news television show, if you want. Well, I guess it's an internet show, but nonetheless, me, sometimes some guests sitting there talking about all the different aspects of what we believe here in politics and stuff like that. We only post the Wednesday episodes unless I really, really, really want to have a different episode posted. Like recently we posted a Friday episode because I was really not having a lot of the stuff being said by No More News. But nonetheless, usually only going to have the Wednesday episodes. If you want to get us every weekday, you're going to have to go to our Facebook page as of right now, and like the American Cynic Party Facebook page. Not quite the highest content quality as far as the Facebook page's content is concerned. It doesn't have, this camera and all that, because we have a second camera that we use to record live while we record the backups and all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, if you want to check that out, you can definitely go ahead and check that out. We definitely would encourage it. We'll get to some of the different places you can find us elsewhere after we're done with this program. But what is the topic for today? Oh, sorry about that. Topic for today is actually going to be kind of interesting. This isn't something that we have shied away from, right? We've talked about this kind of stuff before. Basically, it is going to be modesty, the ideas of modesty, right? And how Americans seem to be losing the ideas of modesty, almost to the point of where modesty has become a bad word. Excuse me. And other aspects of society are becoming encouraged. Today, I want to specifically point out what I see as a depleting morality amongst professing believers, which is bothersome to me, not necessarily because it happens, but because it seems to be endorsed, right? People are going out of their way to say, no, you can't tell us how we can or cannot dress, because that's just violation of our individualistic principles and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's very bothersome to see that amongst predominantly believing women, right? I think that if anybody should be a light on the hill, it should definitely be believing women. It should definitely be believers of all walks of life, regardless of what we're talking about, right? And in this particular subject, I fear that we're going to start lacking tremendously if we haven't already. The first thing I want to show today, here you see Allie Stuckey, brilliant political commentator, having an interview that I would definitely encourage you to watch here with Ben Shapiro, right? And for the most part, almost everything she says I agree with. She tends to have some things I do disagree with, as most millennials do, to be honest. I think we're getting in a more and more liberalized age. But nonetheless, I mean, it's few and far between with Stuckey. I think I agree with her more than most political commentators of her generation, most certainly. But watching this interview, there's a point here that, where they started discussing leggings. And they started discussing it because Ben Shapiro is, of course, an Orthodox Jew who has the concepts like descendant and things like that, right? Where you should dress modestly, as do most Christians, as we'll see later on with some Bible verses. And yet Allie Stuckey, I keep saying Lee, Stuckey, sorry, is a huge fan of leggings. So they started discussing leggings, and there's of course been some recent news in at Notre Dame about leggings, so that it wasn't like this was just brought up for no reason. But nonetheless, this is the conversation that ensued. I thought it was very interesting. Thought that you guys should probably see it if you haven't already. And I wanted to make some comments on it, and then comment on some other articles from LifeSite News and things like that we'll be getting into here now.
Okay, so now I have to ask you the first question where we'll disagree. So apparently you're a big fan of leggings.
I do. I love leggings. Have you ever worn them? I bet if you wore them, you would like them too,
why would I
Ben?
possibly wear leggings?
I'm just saying, you might change your mind.
No, I'm a married heterosexual man. I don't wear leggings.
I don't know. Okay.
I mean, has your husband ever wore leggings?
No.
Right, of course you have. Of course he hasn't. He's a married heterosexual man.
He's not arguing with me about the leggings, though.
Of course, I wouldn't argue with my wife about her wearing leggings either.
Okay. Okay, so
this is my argument against leggings.
Okay, what's your beef? What's your beef? Let's hear it.
So we'll start from a premise. Different clothing conveys different things to people, right? Okay. This is why we don't walk around naked. The closer a woman is to walking around naked,
leggings are not close to that at all.
You are such a girl.
They're pants.
They are pants that are skin tight. That is the purpose of leggings.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, am I wrong about this? Like, there are sweatpants. Sweatpants are baggy and comfortable.
But they
I wear sweatpants.
I know, but you can't go on a walk in sweatpants. It's too hot.
They are literally called sweatpants. You sweat in them. That is what they are for. You go for a run in sweatpants.
And you don't know. You look more put together if you have leggings on than if you have sweatpants on. So if you're going to the grocery store, you want to be comfortable. And not everyone likes how they look in shorts, but leggings, nice leggings, can make you look a lot better than you actually do.
I know that's true, but okay. So I'm not going to ask how. I mean, I've never worn leggings. I've never worn a skirt, so I have no idea what the relative comfort.
All right, so real quick, I do just want to point out, okay, that the argument here you'll notice is absolutely no different than the secularist argument. And Allie Stuckey is a very devout Calvinist Christian, right? And yet her argument is identical, 100%, to the secularist argument, which is, it's comfortable and it makes you look better than you actually are. Now, the comfort thing I've often talked about here a lot, and I'll just say this again. That doesn't necessarily, in fact, not only necessarily, it doesn't nullify the point that's being made at all, quite frankly. The point that's being made is that the clothing being worn is immodest, that it gives off a sexual appeal, a sensual appeal, something like that, right? If you're saying, yeah, but it's comfortable, well, so is being naked, and so is bikinis, and so is so much kinds of other things, right, that you can end up fitting into that. So if that's your one and only qualifier, it's not a very good qualifier. And the other thing that kind of makes it not a good qualifier is that there's other things that are also perfectly comfortable, as Shapiro was just pointing out, that are not even close to as immodest. Right, and even for a lot of girls out there who do wear leggings and even try, they make them modest. I mean, that's at least something, right? So, obviously, and they'll even address that a little bit in the conversation here. But just notice, right, that it's not like that's not a very good excuse, all things considered, when you could easily have something like a skirt, when you could easily have something like longer capris kind of thing, right? When you could easily have something like sweatpants or anything like that, or basketball shorts, right? There's an infinite amount of options, but for some reason that is the option that is gone for. And the other thing, and the thing that I think is actually probably the primary reason, the thing that I think is the thing people want to most defend when you get in some sort of a conversation like this, is that they make you look better than you actually do. Now, whether or not that's true is irrelevant. They do definitely make you look good. That's a fact, right? Specifically sexually good, okay? And I think everybody's fully aware of that, because the idea of sexuality in regards to yoga pants and leggings and things like that has actually become something of a meme recently, right? Well, by recently, I mean like the last 5 to 10 years. But anyways, and to be honest with you, that's actually interesting to say, because that's precisely the point of people like myself and like Ben Shapiro and other people who advocate modest living, is you shouldn't want that kind of attention. There should be nothing in you that requires that kind of attention, right? You should be content with yourself as a being who, is certainly a sensual being, certainly all those different kind of things, but you're with your husband, and if you're a husband, you do that with your wife, right? And things like that. It's not supposed to be something where you're trying to get attention from other people, or even unintentionally soliciting attention from other people. That's certainly something that happens a lot. But if you're unintentionally walking around in like a stripper costume, which I know that's an extreme example, but the point being, the unintentionality of it doesn't actually necessarily mean anything when you're considering the cause, or not the cause, but the effect that you're trying to avoid, right? Which is the attention, and also the way other people are looking at you as well. From a Christian perspective, I would just point out, remember that God says in the book of Matthew that, he says that there are offenses that will come, but woe unto them by whom the offense cometh. Now, that is not something that is just specifically in regards to, your dress or things like that, but it is something that definitely does apply to dress, and we know that because in Matthew 5, Jesus specifies that to even look upon another woman with lust in your heart is adultery. Now, neither party is justified in that situation, right? So don't think that I'm just saying, there's, just one guilty party here, and that guilty party is the woman. That's not true. The offender being talked about in Matthew 5 is the male himself, right? If you look upon another woman with lust, you are committing adultery. But also, Jesus says, woe unto them by whom the offenses come, right? So I think that that's something that we need to, be wary of. We need to be aware of. But nonetheless, continue on here.
Of these clothing items is, are leggings significantly more comfortable than skirts?
Well, you don't want to wear a skirt to the grocery store going on a walk. It's called athleisure. So it's athletic, so you can go from working out to the grocery store. I used to teach bar, and so that's really all that I wore is leggings. So it's very hard for me to see them as inappropriate, although I will say I get the argument. Of course, my Christian friends, my brothers in Christ have told me, you know what, this is inappropriate, it's immodest. But okay.
When your daughter is 16, are you going to let her go to school in leggings?
No, I'm not letting her leave the house. So that's not even...
Now, all right, so I want to point out a few things here still again, right? So first off, notice she's saying that the people who are her religious friends, the people who are her brothers in Christ, right, and sisters in Christ, I would imagine are saying the same thing as well, right, are telling her, look, really, this isn't something you should be wearing. This is something that is kind of immodest, right? And she is, of course, saying, yeah, I get that, but, and then insert the rest of the argument, right? Now, obviously, you have freedoms to do whatever you wish. I don't want people to get confused as to me thinking like, oh, no, you absolutely have to, you know what I mean? Or you're not a Christian, or, somebody needs to go out and stone you, or some other nonsense like that. That is certainly not what is being said here. So just lest anybody get overly legalistic here. But I do think that kind of diminishing of the point. Yeah, I understand, but... Yeah, everybody who happens to share a relationship with Christ has been telling me this, but, right? I think when you diminish the issue like that, you become an influence for those who may be weaker-minded and weaker-willed, right? And we've seen this in the past before. There was a time when, a Christian woman would not be caught dead in a bikini. A Christian woman would not be caught dead in a pair of skinny jeans. In fact, we've gotten... Skinny jeans is one of the most interesting things to look at in history because it is clearly designed to create aesthetic sexual appeal in the opposite sex, and yet it's become so commonplace amongst all walks of society that nobody actually sees it that way anymore. To an extent, of course, obviously, a lot of people see it that way unintentionally when they're looking and things like that, or when they're looking at themselves in the mirror and thinking, oh, I look good, that kind of stuff, right? But we don't talk about it anymore because it's just like that's like the least immodest thing in the female wardrobe in the modern day, right? Part of how that happens is because of I understand but, right? It really genuinely is. When you start saying I understand but, then you're saying you're right, but I have reasons that make me feel like I'm more justified, right? And it's something that you originally think is kind of a small issue, right? But if you look at this progression of things like the sexual revolution, it always started initially with the clothing. And when you're working your way into what is traditionally speaking a very fundamentalist, traditionally speaking a very conservative, traditionally speaking a very traditionalist kind of group of people, like American Protestant Christians, you want to kind of start slowly, right? And I'm not saying that Allie has some sort of an agenda here, right? That's definitely not what I'm claiming. I'm just saying that this is the kind of results that will end up coming from this I know but kind of mentality, right? I understand the argument, but like I said, it's a mentality that I don't think we should have here. And it goes for all of us, right? It goes for all of us. There's a lot of things that I've definitely made arguments for before that I should not have, right? Saying like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but, insert different logical and or emotional appeal here for my own agenda to be met. And that's not something we should do as Christians. We should always, as difficult as it can be, we should always try to make sure we are closer to Scripture, make sure we are closer to, a godly life, a moral life, make sure we are closer to the light on the hill that Jesus speaks of, so that the rest of the world can look at us and be like, you know what, that's a good way to live. And hopefully, even, the morals are one thing, they're good, but the most important thing, hopefully they can actually find Christ. That would be the agenda, that would be the goal, right? I'd be perfectly frank with you, I do have an agenda. I'd like to get you saved, right? I'd like to get us all saved. I know that's not possible, but, I would genuinely wish it was, right? So, and this is the same kind of, you can make the same kind of argument if it's just you look good, you don't want to because of athleisure and it makes you look leisurely, and because it's comfortable, even though there's other things that are comfortable. I mean, that same argument can be made for bikini, for crop top, for something that is incredibly low cut on your shirt, for a short skirt, for a mini skirt, for things like that, right? And you'll start seeing, and you already have started seeing a lot of times, like Allie Stuckey, she's definitely not alone. This is a common millennial belief amongst millennial women, right? That basically, these things are all okay because of different, emotional appeals, and it's dangerous. Is basically what I'm saying. It's dangerous to start putting it in the minds of young Christian women that we just throw out the concepts of modesty, because eventually you'll throw out the concepts of, just like the secular sexual revolution did, right? You'll start throwing out the concepts of, well, maybe we shouldn't, we should look down on fornication. Instead, it's like, oh, I mean, it's just a little bit of fornication. Who cares? And then it's just a little bit of, disrespect for the sanctity of marriage and divorces. And then it's just a little bit of abortions and adulteries. And then it's just a little bit of, children who don't have their fathers in the home, or who have mothers in the home who are not stable, or who don't have their mothers in the home and have fathers in the home who aren't stable, and etc. Right? And I think a lot of fundamentalists in the Christian community here in America have managed to avoid that, but it is certainly getting to a point where, the small creeping aspects of it are starting to show. And you see this in numerous other lights, too. We talk about this, of course, in other lights. Like, for example, the Seventh-day Adventist Church now accepts homosexual marriage. But, those aren't the topic for today. This is, so, nonetheless.
Well, okay, my question is, there are ways to make leggings more modest. So what if you had, like, a longer shirt or something?
That's different.
That's different?
Yeah. I mean, like, stuff that clings to the calves is inherently different than stuff that clings to other parts of the body.
Okay, then I think that's what a lot of people would say. Obviously, wearing a tube top and leggings is a totally different ballgame.
Which is, I think, that's the part of this story that's totally overlooked, is that the woman who originally wrote the reason this has come up is because there's this woman who wrote a letter to the editor at Notre Dame, and she wrote this letter about these girls who wore leggings and tank tops to...
We'll be talking about this later on, by the way.
Mass on a Sunday, and she said that was inappropriate. And then people at Notre Dame went crazy. How could you tell young girls not to wear leggings to church on a Sunday?
Yeah.
And because that's imposing your value system on these girls. And I just thought to myself, wait a second. I went to a private Jewish day school where we had separate girls and boys schools, which, by the way, highly recommended. Very good idea, because girls actually statistically underperform when they are in high school classes with boys. They purposefully underperform because they think that guys are attracted to girls who underperform statistically. Yeah. So there's that. And we all had school uniforms, and that was a very good thing to have school uniforms, because there is a competitiveness to dress, particularly among girls, that does not exist when there are school uniforms. Now, this is not a case that across the broad spectrum of society that everyone has to wear a uniform or anything like that, but it does seem to me that there's been a generalized
Now, it does, he's right? We obviously are not Saudi Arabia. We don't want to start dictating people's dress legally or with force, or, shaming them seriously or anything like that, right? But he is also right that, statistically speaking, it is a matter of fact That, where there are dress codes, where there is high modesty, where there, dress codes in school and work, of course, not outside, where there is high levels of modesty on the outside world, right? Where there is gender separation, where there needs to be, not always, of course, you don't always need to have people segregated by gender everywhere, but it's specifically young hormonal teenagers, right? Everything does tend to work out better. As far as education is concerned, as far as people's use of drugs, people's use of alcohol, people's use of tobacco, sex and things like that, things that happen later on down the line, like getting your college degrees and being married and staying married and all that other kind of stuff, right? Future crimes, all of these things tend to be related in some way, right? At least statistically speaking, they seem to be. They seem to correlate, right, with the ideas of kids who were, growing up in very modest or orthodox or traditionalist, or however when you want to, term it, homes and schools and, working in these kinds of work environments and etc. And something that I think is very noteworthy, because the thing about the Judeo-Christian law, which I call it Judeo-Christian just because both Christians and Jews would affirm the Old Testament, the laws in the Old Testament, therefore that is, in a sense, a Judeo-Christian law, right? There's obviously the different doctrinal disagreements. I'm not saying we are under the law, but nonetheless, right, Judeo-Christian law. The thing about it is it's so fantastically correct because it is true, right? And, and one of the things that I like to point out all the time when we're talking about issues like this is, if God does truly exist, then his moral law is the correct moral law. Going against it will have both unintended indirect consequences, right? And direct consequences. Direct consequences in this particular case are like the sexualization of women, and the idea that like Ben was just saying, that you need to get more and more competitive with the other women in your area, which is why we now have 12-year-olds wearing, full-fledged makeup and booty shorts, right? Which is horrible. It is a horrible degradation of our society, right? And it teaches them horrible things too, let me point out. It teaches them not to value themselves as women, which they definitely should, because it leads them to be with some of the worst, most terrible, most awful, most unworthy of any sort of womankind of men, right? The idea is just as an example to, kind of make this point, the idea that the sexualization of women is only a female problem is obviously false. It is both genders, but nonetheless, more back to the point. This sort of competition and stuff like that, it's not good. It breeds very bad, it breeds a very bad mentality. It breeds very bad behaviors. It breeds very bad self-esteem issues and things like that. Leads you to do things that would cause you to, for example, maybe go out, on some sort of a Friday night and be overly flirty with a guy and things like that. And one thing leads to another. Maybe you're cheating on your boyfriend now, something that is kind of normalized in the modern society that is not in the past. And that starts with these basic fundamental principles of keeping yourself modest in dress, respecting the institutions of marriage, and things along those lines.
Acceptance of dressing down to the point where immodesty is basically seen as something not only normal but praiseworthy. Like, you're more courageous the less modest you are. The less modest you are publicly. And this applies to guys too, by the way. Like, when I see guys running around on the street in just shorts and no shirt, I'm like, just put on a shirt, dude.
Seriously,
what is this?
Also true.
And girls,
it's the progressives who did that,
do
by the
the
way.
same thing as well. And now I do think that there are settings in which certain clothes are appropriate and settings in which certain clothes are inappropriate. I would say church is an inappropriate place to wear leggings because they're too casual. But to the grocery store, when you got two kids in tow and you don't want to wear shorts or a skirt, as you would suggest, then I think
I like how you look at me with scorn when you a skirt as you would suggest.
Any girl listening to this is like, a skirt? What? No, but I understand. I understand that your concerns.
See, there you have it again, right? You have this. First off, you have this disdain of scorn, this idea of, oh, how dare you, the patriarchal male, tell me what to do, right? Which Allie Stuckey is not that kind of girl, but it's something that is almost second nature to the modern American female when a guy is saying that kind of thing. Realistically speaking, if a girl was saying that exact same kind of thing, it would probably be somebody would probably attach that sort of sentiment, that sort of feeling to some sort of patriarchal oppression, which is not true. It's just factually inaccurate. It's just basic modesty. Excuse me. But once again, there you have, right, you have the I understand but, and more excuses. Well, I'm in the grocery store with the 2 kids in tow kind of thing, so it's not like it's the same thing as going down to church, right? Yeah, but it starts somewhere, right? It starts with everybody going out on their day-to-day lives doing this kind of stuff until eventually, like he said, you start dressing down to the point where modesty is not even a concern of anyone's, anymore. And then you eventually do get to the point where who cares if you're wearing it at church? And like I said, all the other kind of stuff that eventually comes from, like the disrespecting of marriage, like the disrespecting of your own bodies, and et cetera, the free giving of sex. It starts at a place that is small. The snowball starts this big before it goes down the mountain, right, and gets huge. And it starts with this exact thing right here, with people saying, yes, I understand, but it's just a modesty thing. It's just, I want to be comfortable. It's not like I'm insert here, other kind of stuff. I get your argument, but, right, exactly.
And I'll think about this.
And
I'll roll this
listen,
over.
you can wear whatever you want, but this one again falls under the matrix of reality, which is you can wear whatever you want.
I got it.
It's fine. It's a free country. Wear whatever you want. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm not saying if a guy does something bad or stares at you the wrong way that is acceptable in any way.
But you're saying it's immodest.
But I'm saying it is less modest on an objective standard than the vast majority of clothing that women can wear
shorts?
publicly.
Because you can see the whole leg.
I mean, it depends on the length of the shorts.
So you're good with Bermuda shorts and skirts. Got it.
Well, I mean, no, jeans are fine.
Okay.
Listen. Again, wear whatever you want, but on the hierarchy of what
totally
conveys
understand.
messages. But this is the part of the debate that I find so, like, you're making an argument that is based on comfort, but the debate that I actually saw publicly was not about that. The debate I saw publicly was, I can wear whatever I want, and it's not my fault how guys look at me.
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, well, true and not true. Like, true that guys are not relieved of responsibility in how they ogle women. Also not true in that how you dress obviously has an impact on how people look at you. I mean, if that were not the case, then policemen would not wear uniforms and doctors would not wear white coats.
Yeah, and
this is also another very good point made by Ben Shapiro here, where it's like, right, so obviously, like the Bible says, to look upon another woman with lust is to commit adultery with her in your own heart. That is true, and you are not relieved of your moral responsibility to not ogle women. At the same time, women, if they are putting their bodies out to be ogled from people who do not have that moral standard, they are begging to be ogled, right? And that's just a fact. That is just a basic statement of fact. And I'd also like to point out, by the way, that the ogler is not violating the woman's rights, right? She's not, he's not somebody who should be punished in a physically violent way or punished in a way that's legal, right? He's obviously not a good person. Obviously, this needs to be addressed in some way. But this isn't something that I'm talking about like legal aspect. He's not sexual assault or anything like that. Catcalling is not sexual assault. It's not an example of rape culture, right? And in this particular case, it is something that is very, very much self-caused. Okay. A really good example is that cancer is evil always. 100% of the time it is evil. It's wretched. It's disgusting, right? Nobody deserves to get cancer, right? At the same time, if you are smoking cigarettes for 40 plus years, you did know completely what the consequences of your actions were, rather, right? And even that's a little bit more of an extreme example, because there are definitely examples of, people going extreme, saying, you've heard the argument that such and such a girl deserved the actual legitimate sexual assault being given her way because she was wearing some sort of promiscuous clothing. If you ever hear anyone make that argument, that's a disgusting person. That person is a vile human, and quite frankly, that you should correct that. I'm not saying with violence or anything like that. Let's just, once again, making perfectly sure, but counter that with arguments, because that's not okay. And forcing people to wear what you think is acceptable is not okay either. We do live in a free country, right? But the people do need to separate what is right, as in a moral right, and what is your right, as in a legal right that you have. Let me give you a perfect example of that. It is completely morally wrong, incorrect, right, evil, for me to walk up to a black person and start calling him the N-word or any other sort of racial slur, right, being vile to him, harassing him with these sort of things, right? And I think harassing, if you start harassing, you're obviously going to the point of where I think you're probably violating the law at that point. But just to say something like that, that is not okay. It's not illegal, though. I can sit up here and call President Obama whatever sort of words I want to, or any other sort of popular black person, right? It is my right to say that. It does not make it morally right, though. And that's the same thing that you have here, right? It is your right, if you'd like, to walk outside in incredibly promiscuous-looking clothing, so long as you're not actually naked and taking it to the extreme, which would be like when I'm going and harassing the black person, right? But that doesn't make it morally correct, right? It's not something that I think you are, morally justified in doing. And by the way, let me just point out, the secular world is way out in front of the Christian world on this point, right? New Hampshire and Colorado are both debating whether or not they're going to take free the nipple cases to court, with Fort Collins in Colorado wanting to keep their ban on female nipples as something that is immodest under their obscenity laws, right? The court down there said that that was a unconstitutional law, so the Fort Collins court might take it even further to the Supreme Court. In New Hampshire, it is the exact opposite. The city actually won, said this was not a violation of the 14th Amendment. That court is correct, by the way. New Hampshire is known for its correct interpretations of the Constitution, to be perfectly frank. But anyways, and the activists might actually take that to the Supreme Court. That is the eventual destination of the believing women as well, if they continue to go down this path. Okay, just because one is secular and one is not does not mean anything. When you start giving into these certain moral dilemma, giving into the wrong side in these certain moral dilemmas, it is inevitable, right? But I do just want to point that out, right? It is something that is like you are actively asking for that kind of objectification. And actually, this has been a problem really throughout American society. Sexual objectification is almost entirely a female-caused issue, right? If we actually look at the female wardrobe, it is undeniable that it goes out of its way to wear less and show more, okay? I do not have, look at this shirt, okay? It does not matter how large your chest is. This shirt will never show any stomach or chest. It just simply won't do it because it's not designed for that, right? And I didn't have to go out of my way to try and look for the shirt. I didn't have to go, try and, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or something like that, some sort of ludicrous number to try and get this shirt. It's just simply a shirt. It's a regular shirt. It's easy to make, nice and simple, right? I don't know a single shirt that does not fit the qualifications this one does as far as what I was just talking about, right? None of them would show my midriff. None of them would show my chest if I had a large chest, female chest, if I was a female, right? None of them. Not a single one. And yet most female shirts do show at least one of those two things, if not both, right? I don't own a single pair of pants that shows off my form, or a single shirt that shows off my form. Most female clothes do both of those things, right? My tank tops, which, by the way, I do not wear except for as undershirts, are still probably 4 to 5 times thicker than the spaghetti straps that women wear. None of them go down to here, and that includes on the back as well, right? All of my shorts below the knee. Even some of them that would be above the knee is still significantly farther than short shorts, right? And et cetera. This is actually the big argument that I've always had against people saying that dress codes are sexist. No, dress codes are actually gender neutral. See, dress codes only appear to be sexist because the female wardrobe goes out of its way to be sexual, right? So when you say your shorts can only go up to a certain length, that seems to be something that is going out of its way to target women because men simply don't wear those shorts. But if men were to wear those shorts, they would get dress coded just as often, and I've seen it happen, right? That is the exact same thing that you actually have going on with these situations, right? It is sexual objectification is completely self-caused, is the point I'm making. You see that in female dress, but you can even see that beyond female dress. And by the way, I didn't even mention things like skimpy bikinis and things like that, right? But nonetheless, you can even see that in things that go beyond female dress. Like, for example, a lot of women like to follow models, like to watch models, right? like to support models. The vast majority of people who contribute to models are women. And that is an incredibly degrading profession. Incredibly degrading. It's literally selling your body. Not selling your labor, but actually selling your body. Like, as in the product is pictures of your flesh, right? Primarily supported by women. The pornography rights movement was sex-positive feminism. The no-fault divorce was a feminist movement. Getting rid of adultery laws was feminist. Making fornication okay was feminist. Actually, shocking, I know, but a lot of the people who said men should be able to have their nipples out was also this feminist movement. Specifically these progressives, but it included a lot of the people in the feminist movement, right? This sexualization thing has always been a female-caused problem. You can't tell us what to do because we're strong, independent women that come from this idea of feminism, and more specifically comes from this idea of a rejection of God, right? Because that's where a rejection of the family unit comes from. That's where a rejection of a husband comes from. That's where a rejection of the patriarchal system comes from, is from rejection of God, because he set all those things in place, right? And you see the results. I mean, we have about 100 years now of the results. When we started this kind of stuff back in 1920s, right? I'm sure you could probably pin a date to it, probably whenever I don't know what the exact date that the Roaring 20s would begin, but let's just call it 1920, right? If that's the case, we're on our 99th year of evidence, right? And the evidence is damning. It's very, very damning.
Totally agree with you. So maybe there is a little bit of hypocrisy on my side, because I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I agree with modesty, and I agree with personal responsibility. We just talked about it. But I just really love leggings. But I'll think about it. I'll think about this. I'll mull this over. I got a lot of leggings to get rid of. That's like half my clothes.
I mean,
No, and that pretty much ends the points of the conversation that we need. But I just want to point out, right, once again, it's now, and I give credit where credit is due to the idea of, like, all right, I'll consider what you said. You've made very good points, right? That's good. A lot of women end up just saying, no, you're being grossly misogynistic and this kind of stuff, and you're clearly a sexist and blah, 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 right? So much credit to Allie Stuckey for that. But you still have a very poor justification. I just really like leggings. They're just kind of comfortable, right? Etc. It's not... It doesn't bode well when you're making arguments for the Christian faith and the way that the Christian faith wants to have women respect themselves. And the secular world is currently clamping down on people of a religious nature's right to say these things. The Notre Dame example that Ben Shapiro was referencing, quite frankly, is ridiculous. See, you have a New York Times article here. It's possible leggings of the future. Deal with it. Yeah, just deal with it. It's possible that being topless is the future. So why don't you just deal with it? No, I'm sorry. I happen to think that women are not simply objects to be looked at. And I also happen to know that human nature will have them looked at if they're presenting themselves like that. And I don't like that. So I'm going to go against what the future says, because the future, if it's leggings, is incorrect. Okay? Last week, they set off a firestorm at the University of Notre Dame. Why does this item of clothing get people so riled up? By Vanessa Friedman. When did leggings make the leap from garment to cultural lightning rod? They actually were starting off as cultural lightning rod. I don't know where you've been, but when I was in the 5th grade, these things were a cultural lightning rod. Like, come on. For what are essentially stretchy footless tights in a seemingly endless array of patterns and colors, they have been an unexpected source of controversy. See, these are only unexpectedly controversial if you aren't paying very much attention, right? They are clearly very sexualized articles of clothing. They just simply are. And if you wear them as if they're just normal pants and don't plan around that, Allie was actually saying, there's ways you can make them modest. Sure, yeah. But if you don't do that, though, okay, they show off your figure, honestly, better than not having them on in the first place would, right? Like, as in having nothing, right? So, this is only unexpected if you have this worldview of, no, modesty is just not a thing. It's not something I should ever have to care about in my entire existence. But anyways, latest uproar came last week when Marianne White, the mother of 4 sons, wrote a letter to the Observer, the school newspaper for both the University of Notre Dame and the nearby Women's College of St. Mary's, asking female students to ignore fashion and stop wearing leggings, which I commend her for, by the way. It was for their own as well as the greater good, she suggested, in part because leggings made it hard for men to control themselves. Now, this is funny. They always paint it as the, oh, it's hard for men to control themselves kind of thing, right? As if men are going to go out and start raping people because they're wearing leggings, which is not the argument anybody makes, okay? Is there people who say that? Yeah, in like Saudi Arabia, there are some people who say that. But here in the States, that is not something that we actually claim. And it's not something we have claimed, with the exception of very, very rare and peculiar cases, okay? Now, if you want to say, well, it's going to lead to, we're saying men control themselves as far as ogling. Well, first off, say that, because you already know, I know, you know, the fans know, everybody is aware of what you are trying to portray when you say control themselves. That's the first thing. But the second thing, and the much more important thing, is it's simply human nature, ma'am. Okay? If I go out waving my money around, just like Ben Shapiro was saying, if I go out waving my money around, saying, hey, I have hundreds of thousands of dollars, come and get some, and I am in the middle of Mexico City, where they have the worst gang problem, whatever neighborhood that happens to be, right? If I got robbed, I was kind of begging to get robbed, right? Now, obviously, I am not saying that for the cases of certain aspects like sexual assault or things like that. But when it comes to the ogling part, yes, you are asking to be ogled in that particular case. That does not make the men morally justified in ogling you. It does, however, mean that it is entirely a self-caused problem. It could be easily avoided by not wearing the leggings. Easily avoided. The problem is completely gone. Or wearing something over the leggings. Right? Some sort of a skirt or a long shirt or whatever. Right? Very, very easy fix. But no, you see, whatever we can do to try and paint men as the bad guy, paint the patriarchy as the bad guy, go after a religious institution, whatever, right? The you wear it, you're asking for it implication of the letter, that is false, factually inaccurate reporting on the point of the New York Times. But of course, why are we surprised, right? They're always factually inaccurate in their reporting. Not to mention the sheer idea of censoring clothing. Never said censor clothing. She asked for the people, the students themselves, okay, to wear different clothing. That is not censorship. Censorship would be asking Notre Dame to say, you can't do that. Which, of course, they have a right to do because they're a public, or private, rather, institution. Okay? And that's not something that is the idea of censoring clothing. Yeah, because there aren't hundreds of schools in this country that are not even religious in nature that have a dress code. Yeah, that's just not a thing, right? Of course it is. Of course it's a thing. This isn't some ridiculously weird idea. It might be in your really small echo chamber, Miss Friedman, but I actually highly doubt that. I actually think that you know exactly what the problems are here. You know exactly that this woman was not going out of her way, Miss White was not going out of her way to say censor clothing, that she was not saying you're asking for it, right? That she was not saying as far as rape, because that's of course what you're implying. We're not stupid, okay? These are just lies. They're outright lies. And they're lies that the liberal and progressive and atheist and feminist agendas, or movements rather, want to push so that they can make the religious people, the modest people, the conservative people, the traditionalist people, the moral people look bad, crazy, obnoxious, etc. And it's bleeding, as you just saw, into the Protestant Christian community. And here you'll see it's actually bleeding into the Catholic community, because what started this off, you'll see in a second. Set off the predictable firestorm of protests, but both on campus and off. For 2 days, students wore leggings in a show of group defiance. There was Leggings Day ND hashtag on Twitter, and assorted men and women posted pictures of themselves in solidarity with leggings wearers. In solidarity. In solidarity for what? You're not being oppressed? Nobody's oppressing you. Okay? In fact, once again, you liars, the letter said women should not do it themselves. It said nothing about censorship, which the school has every right to do. It's called a dress code. Look it up. It's a completely uncontroversial thing. At least it should be if you have a brain on you. Completely insane. Completely insane. By Friday, the Observer had another piece, this one from the editors in response to the first, saying, quote, having received over 35 letters to the Observer in addition to the countless verbal comments, tweets, memes, and class discussions about Monday's letter, we have been astonished by the conversation the Leggings piece has sparked, end quote. Meanwhile, those wider conversations continued over the weekend. This follows a 2017 United Airlines incident when two teenagers were who were past travelers, a category that includes relatives of airline employees, were prevented from flying because they were wearing leggings, something that they have every right to do. Observers complained, social media got up in arms, and the makers of the leggings had a field day. Puma, for example, jumped into the fray and burnished its image by offering 20% discount on the leggings to anyone presented in the United ticket. Which, quite frankly, if I was United, I would have just used the abilities that I have as a company to refuse service to anyone by saying, if you have Puma, if this is the way you're going to respond to me, then if you're wearing Puma, you're just simply not going to fly on this plane ever again. Like, I'm sorry. It wasn't optional at first. The fact that you're going to start fighting with me about this is ridiculous. And that in turn punctuated the endless debate among parents and schools and students that can be summed up as, quote, leggings are not pants, quote, yes they are. Or / yes they are, end quote. In general, this existential interrogation of the soul of a garment, because really that's what it is, centers on women, women's bodies, and the general discomfort with seeing too much of them or believing you are. That's certainly where Mrs. White was going with her letter, and it's generally the political offense by those who are getting on the pro-legging side. How dare you accuse me of dressing to seduce, an argument that has particular resonance in the era after Me Too. That's because you're ridiculous. Okay? That is because you're ridiculous. You are not thinking about this from a logical perspective. Okay? Of course you are trying to dress like that to seduce people. Of course you are trying to dress like that to make your body look good. And if you press any woman on this matter, they will eventually admit it. As Allie just did. Right? This is just a fact. It's a basic fact. And by the way, with the Me Too movement was garbage. Okay? The Me Too movement was like a few cases of legitimate sexual assault here and there of women who actually did need to come out, and then like 95% bull coming out from people who just wanted to get on the latest trend, right? We all know that. Everybody's fully aware of that. That's why it died. But leggings began their rise to wardrobe domination with the advent of a comfort culture, the post-casual Friday turn of the millennium move that moved away from formality and picked up steam with the rise of fleece-wearing hedge funders, the fall of the old Wall Street, and the fetishization of Silicon Valley's hoodies and Teva-glad geniuses, and became even more pronounced under the influence of the wellness movement. Leggings also function differently for age groups. For Gen Y, they tend to be a lifestyle signifier that has more to do with health and activity than, say, everyday workwear. Gen Zers, who largely reject uniformity and traditional layers, they're simply basic, the equivalent of jeans. They're something you put on without thought. I mean, that's a lie, but a lot of people say that, but everybody has had these things pointed out to them, which is to say leggings are about a lot of things, and sex may be the least of them if sex plays any role at all. Bull. It is literally a meme, okay? Literally a meme. That leggings are a sexual thing that show off your butt, that are even see-through and things like that, okay? When something becomes a meme, it by definition is culturally significant. Nonetheless, one thing that was striking about the Notre Dame protest was the rejection of what they saw as traditional gender assumptions involved. Leggings are not the sole province of the siren female, was the idea. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is because Notre Dame is a Catholic school. It's supposed to, I know the Catholic Church virtually never does this anyways, but it's supposed to hold the Holy Scriptures that are the Holy Bible as its moral code. And yet here are people who are attending the school protesting that somebody, which by the way, you want to know what this article doesn't tell you? When Miss White was writing this letter, she was writing it because women were in tank tops that showed off their midriff and breasts, as well as these leggings, at a mass. They're in Easter Mass. Not Easter Mass. Sorry, it was a different Mass. This is before Easter. But you're in church, for crying out loud. Are you kidding me? And this is somehow controversial to say that you shouldn't dress like this at church. How is that controversial? Dude, I don't even wear an Arizona Cardinals shirt at church. Okay? I don't wear hoodies at church. I don't even wear blue jeans at church, for crying out loud. How is this a controversial thing? To say you should not wear leggings at a mass. Come on. Are we really so pathetic and infantilized that we are going to get offended when somebody says you should not dress immodestly when you're going to a place where you're worshiping somebody who told you not to dress immodestly? It's ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. And by the way, just like to point out on this, right, some of these other articles, look, hating on the Notre Dame mom's wretched view of leggings takes the easy way out. This is from the Washington Post, being written by, who is this? Monica Hayes. Wretched. Really? Wretched? Are you serious? It's wretched to say that you shouldn't dress in a sexually perverted manner when you're going to a mass at a church. How is that wretched? What is the definition of wretched in your completely, ridiculously asinine worldview? Miss Hess or Hesse, or however you say your last name. In fact, I mean, does the word wretched even have a definition to you? Like, or is that just a word you just throw out because it sounds nice and it sounds like a good attack against your opponents? That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, what semblance of morality do you actually possess? What is your objective standard, Miss Heath? I'd like to know. I would genuinely like to know, because what I'm thinking, what I am seeing from this, look at this. It's mostly a blessing and occasionally a hazard of the job. The readers send me column ideas, things from the news that have made me angry. Made her angry. Angry to say that you should not dress in a sexually perverted manner at church. That makes her mad. It's completely ridiculous. And you see here, certainly not news, right? She told them leggings were too suggestive, so they wore them in protest. Hey, you shouldn't be going around with your top off. It's going to get you looks. Okay, fine. Then everybody should take their top off. What kind of a response is that? That's the response of an 8-year-old child. Okay? It is not the response of grown, supposedly Christian women. It is not. Period. That's just simply the facts of the matter. Okay? And I'd just like to point out here a few things before we get on to it, why this could be dangerous. Obviously, I already pointed out the thing with Allie Stuckey, right? First off, 1 Timothy 2:9, we just literally just go, what does the Bible say about modesty, right? And these pop up because it's that obvious, right? You don't have to do a serious study of the scriptures to know that this is something that you're not supposed to do in church. I mean, come on! 1 Timothy 2:9, likewise also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel, with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire. Excuse me. But with what is proper, if you go down here, it has the 10th verse, but with what is proper for women who profess godliness with good works. 1 Corinthians 6:19-20, or do you know that your body is do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you are bought with a price, so glorify God in your body. 1 Peter 3:3-4. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry. We're down here now, by the way. Right here, okay. Or the clothing you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. Proverbs 31:30, charm is deceitful and beauty in vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout, a beautiful woman is without discretion. Here you have Proverbs 11:22. A woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak, for whoever does these things is an abomination unto the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 22:5. Matthew 5:28, but I say unto you that everyone who looks upon a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in her own heart. And like I already pointed out, there is another verse in Matthew, I believe it's in 18, that says, woe unto those by whom offense cometh, right? Well, this is an offense, and Jesus is saying, woe unto those by whom offenses cometh. This is not a debatable issue if you believe in the Bible. It's not, okay? The facts are that Jesus, God, however you want to term it, right? Same thing, does not agree with immodesty, period. No discussion about that. There is no room for discussion about that. That is what it says. And if you are going to start making the argument that it's okay but, and that it's so oppressive for you to say that I can't wear this promiscuous clothing in church, then what are you doing in church, quite frankly? And by the way, let me point out how this can be potentially dangerous, because we have here, I actually talked about this on the Monday episode of The Watchdog, April 29th. So, and we also did the Wednesday episode of The Watchdog. I think it was April 25th, maybe 24th, something like that. 24th, yeah. Catch any of those are on YouTube or Facebook. Cardinals kept in dark about Pope Francis' plan of evangelization ahead of doctrine. Pope Francis has been going out of his way to say we need to start evangelizing more than we need to start being, what was the word there? We need to evangelize more so than adhere to doctrine, basically, right? Getting people under the auspices of the Catholic Church over what the Catholic Church actually teaches. Why is this dangerous? Why do I bring this up in this situation? Well, because Notre Dame is a Catholic university, right? And it's going to kowtow. You've already seen it start with the Observer kowtowing, okay? When it does, and it will, it's going to be used as a precedent by Pope Francis in this evangelization ahead of doctrine mission here that he now has, right? Because his job is going to be to try and bring people of all different faiths, of all different denominations, even the secularist, atheist, millennial, New Ager, right? He wants them all under the auspices of the Catholic Church. So he's going to start coming in and weighing in on this issue at some point. Whether that's now or in the next 5 years, I'm not entirely sure. But you just wait. You mark my words here. With this evangelization ahead of doctrine thing, it is inevitable that Notre Dame succumbs to this. And when Notre Dame does, it's inevitable that other universities do as well. And when people start taking the Allie Stuckey opinion of, I understand, but it's comfortable. I understand, but I just don't want to. I understand, but any woman who's listening to this would be like, skirt? Really? Right? If that is the mentality you're going to have, then it is just a matter of time before, just like the secular world is now, the Christian world is asking, why do we put on shirts in the first place? It's just a matter of time. These are the logical conclusions people reach when they start foregoing their own moral codes. But nonetheless, that's everything that we've got here today. Tune in, hopefully tomorrow, if I can get another episode of this up, for another episode of Un-Apologetics. Like and share if you found this interesting, and of course you can subscribe to us here on the Synagogue if you are interested in our content. You can also leave any questions, comments, criticisms, or concerns in the comment section down below. That would of course be very appreciated. I do want to briefly state we have multiple other places where you can find us. The Synagogue on Minds, ACP Official on Gab, Terrestrial Earthbird, parentheses, the Synagogue on Twitter, Cynic Thought on Instagram, and of course our American Cynic Party page on Facebook, the American Cynic Party. You can also, of course, like the Synagogue here. And we have Watchdogs, like I said, on here now as well. So not just Un-Apologetics either. Let's go ahead and say a brief prayer. Heavenly Father, I just pray that you turn people away from their own sinful desires, Lord, including myself, and lead us to do nothing more than glorify you and glorify your will and glorify your way and live righteous lives, Lord, that lead people to understand just how amazingly you can change our hearts and souls, Lord. I pray that you use this video for nothing more than the glorification of your kingdom. And I pray that you help me to stray neither to the right nor the left when I'm saying these things, Lord, but rather just giving your own gospel truth, Lord. I ask these things in Jesus Christ's name, and I thank you for having the ability to read your word, to read these videos, to read these articles, rather, Lord, to make these videos. I thank you so much for everything you've blessed me with, Lord. I ask for your blessings upon all who watch this video and all who don't. In Jesus Christ's holy name, may we turn to you in great revitalization of this country, Lord, and of this world. Amen. All right. Have a good rest of your day, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We'll have all the other, articles and stuff that we read here in the not comment section, sorry, in the description below. Shalom. Have a good rest of your evening. God bless.